Well, we achieved the result that we were after. We got the logo scaling, and we also got them centered vertically inside the header, but the downside is we're left with kind of a mess. But the good news is cleaning up this mess is actually going to be really easy and straightforward. Check this out. I'm going to head back to my code because I want my logo to sit back over where it was, over on the left-hand side of the header, right? So back inside the CSS here, where we've added in the top, left, bottom, and right, as a matter of fact, we don't need the right. I'm going to get rid of that guy. I simply threw that in to show you how you could center a div also horizontally as well as vertically inside of another div. So let's get rid of that right :_ 0, save up your CSS back to the browser and refresh, and wouldn't you know it, we're all the way back to generally where we started. So the logo is over on the left, but he's centered vertically for the most part. Not absolutely centered, but by and large, he's centered inside the header, which is great. But as you can see, once I scale down to a lower resolution device, we're running into some problems here with the menu items and also the button as well. So we have a little bit more work to do here. So give me a second here. I'm going to flip back to Apple iPad, which of course is the device that I'm using for my previewing here. And let's go after the menu first. So give me a sec. Back over into the external style sheet. Go and look for menu LI. It's a compound rule, so a list item inside of a menu. Not sure if you remember setting that up with me in the previous course or not, but he's empty, of course, and we're going to go and throw in some properties for this guy. I'm going to start off with a margin right property with a value of just 10 pixels, like so. The other thing that I want to do is I want to control his font size. Now, this is something that we haven't really talked about yet in terms of setting up font sizes for responsive design. What I could do is I could use a fixed font size, something like 20px, right? I could certainly do that. That's certainly fine. But because this is a responsive layout, what we can start to do is set font sizes using relative sizes, like 90%, rather than a fixed width. Okay, so you could use percentages, you could use ems. There's actually another unit of measurement, which I'll show you in just a little while. It's pretty cool. But for the time being, anyway, I'm going to go font-size 90% for this fella. Okay? All right, let's see what we get here. Go ahead and save up your work and head back to the browser and refresh ScreenFly there. There we go. That looks a little bit more reasonable. I've collapsed down the space a little bit, collapsed down the font size as well. Nothing too earth-shattering in terms of the changes, but at least it kind of fits here now on these lower resolution tablet devices. So we're going to wind up with something like this. Okay? All right, there we go. Now, I want to handle the button here as well, and this gives me an opportunity to show you something kind of cool, again, related to building responsive layouts and ensuring that your responsive layouts are going to scale and adjust automatically, depending on the device that's being used to view them. So I'm going to go after the button now inside my external style sheet. There he is sitting right there. What I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to say, all right, I want the button's width to be no more than 25% of the available width, or the parent container's width, if that makes sense for you. I'm going to set his height to auto, like so, okay? And then check this out. I'm going to set a maximum width on this guy to 150 pixels, okay? Now, what the max width property does is he prevents the button from scaling larger than whatever value we set, in my case, 150 pixels. If I don't set a max width, then this guy could scale up to pretty much any size, so long as he's still 25% of the parent container, okay? So I hope that makes at least a little bit of sense anyway. Now, just like we had set up an extra rule for our logo's image, I'm going to do the same thing with my button. So check this out. I'm going to create a new compound rule called button space img. So if I have a graphic sitting inside of an element that's under the control of a class called button, bit of a mouthful there, which we do, don't forget that the button label is actually a graphic, right? Then we want to control this guy. Now, what do we want to do with this guy? Well, very simply, I want to set his width to 100%, just like that, okay? All right, that should do the job. Go ahead and save up your work, and let's head back to ScreenFly and refresh. Now we wind up with something like this. Let's try scaling this guy to see what sort of results we're going to get. You can scale all the way down to the Kindle Fire there if you want, Or you know what? Perhaps rather than using ScreenFly at this stage of the game, you want to see this in an actual browser. Go ahead and refresh your browser window if you happen to still have that kicking around, and try scaling this guy. And what's going to happen is we're going to see not only the logo scale, but also the button is going to scale for us as well, depending on the size of the device that's being used to view the content, just like so. Okay? I want to mention here, too, that sometimes you'll be scaling your browser window and you go, oh, look, the menu is jamming into the actual logo. The layout's falling apart. It's pretty much impossible to build a layout that's going to work perfectly under all conditions. That's why we wanted to target those 3 device widths, those 3 media queries way back when we discussed that. So we know exactly what device widths we want to target, which are the most common. Okay? So there you go. All right, now, before I close this exercise out, a quick public service announcement, a quick reminder for you. Don't forget that the high-res media query is cascading down into the medium-resolution media query, as I demonstrated for you earlier on when I showed you how to work with several groups of CSS rules and how they can be applied simultaneously. I reminded you of this actually a few lessons back as well, and this is another gentle reminder. So again, what's happening here with the logo, with the menu, with the menu button, and the header itself is all being determined by the cascading effect that we're seeing inside of our external style sheet. So for instance, I'll use the menu list items, this guy right here, for myself on line 120, menu LI. The result that we're getting on our device or inside of our browser is a combination of what we're seeing here and also what's happening up towards the top right here in the high-res list of CSS rules. Okay? Again, this is where working with responsive design can get tricky because you're working with groups of rules. Now, an application like Coda, and I know other applications will let you do this as well, but what Coda will let me do is actually create a split view of the same external style sheet. Let me show you this really quickly. Again, a slightly unscheduled detour. I think it's underneath the View menu. Yeah, there it is. View and then split style.css horizontally. So then what I can actually do is I could have my medium resolution media query open down at the bottom, and I could have my high resolution media query opened up towards the top, something like this. So I can look at the previous rules and understand exactly what's happening inside my browser. Just kind of a cool thing that you can do. I think Dreamweaver lets you do this as well, if I'm not mistaken. But in any regard, there you go. I wanted to remind you of the cascading effect that's happening here inside of our external style sheet. And don't forget, too, that everything that you and I are building here for our tablet layout is going to cascade down to the low res, to the smartphone media query as well. So bear that in mind as well.